Are you coming out of this call?
Yo.
What's up?
Ooh. Fix my audio.
Hi.
Hello, Matt Price. Hello, Rico. Rico, how do I say your last name so I can fully address you?
We say Gardafe, so we put the emphasis on the first syllable.
Okay, Gardafe. Cool. Yo, DC.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. I did not make it to True. Probably for the best. I would still be in the rain.
Not really a nice day.
It's a surfing day, actually. I just got out of the water.
I love that you're... Whoa, that's nice. I like that your brain is tuned for that.
It's kind of... it was pretty interesting. I had been told by my friend whose house I'm at right now that it looked a little different than usual. And we got to the bay and there's like a 2-foot ice shelf all along the edge. And there's these big ice boulders floating in the water. I thought, oh my God, we can't do this. But then, I don't know, just hop in the water. It turns out the water's only like 8 inches deep at the edge and it was completely safe, no hazards. It's sort of weird.
Yeah.
Felt really hardcore. It looked really good though at the edge.
Did you take pictures?
No, I really wished we had taken pictures, but we were in our wetsuits with our media on.
So I'll probably say this like a few more times, but I'll just drop the agenda if you are not on it now. Please jump on. We'll just wait for a couple more people to join before we get started.
What's up, Sportsman?
And Don, it looks like because I joined right before you, I'm the moderator. So do you want me to pause or anything before we start, or what would you normally do?
We can pause recording until we start. But I also am too.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll wait a couple more minutes to see if other people join us. And I would love if someone is keen to be a note taker for this session. Matt, thank you. And I'll just redrop the notes if you didn't grab them from the channel. And you should all be able to jump on. And so also just to say this, because this won't affect kind of the meeting, I had distributed this in advance and said to people like, hey, what do you think we need to talk about? And kind of tried to source that. So if you have something burning in your mind, there's the section called Team Sourced, what we need to talk about. I was like struggling with concise names. So you could like add something briefly, but we're gonna talk about it together and just ensure that we have an agenda that suits what we need to cover. Hey, Matt.
What's up, dude? Hello.
Yo.
Let's give it 2 more minutes because I think Eben and maybe Jeff were also able to join.
Phenomenal.
This is a full call also.
It's not just data together.
Kickoff.
People together.
So many boxes of bodiless heads.
But it would be. I think that's better than headless bodies.
Yes.
Thank you for modeling, PatCon.
I'm doing the whole call like this.
Oh, wait, let me get lower. Oh, because on my, but that's only maybe for me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would be so great if you could be my head. But anyway.
I guess it's not consistent.
I think we found the reason why Zoom's choices are the wrong ones, because we can't be each other's heads and bodies. Purely that.
Everything else pales in comparison. Okay.
All right. It's 11:05.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm behind. That's weird that I'm a little off. But yeah, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining. This is awesome to see so many of you. And if you're, we have the agenda. That's my fourth, third time dropping the link, so I will stop after this to follow along. And Matt Price said he'll take notes, which is wonderful. And what I thought we would do, I had sort of asked people to share what they thought we needed to talk about. So before we actually talk about things, we're going to just make sure that we prioritize the right things for this call. But I wasn't sure if everyone would know each other on the call, so I thought we could do a really quick intro. So we could just go around and say our name, maybe also the city we're based at, and what we're interested in here today. So keep it super concise, just in the interest of time. And also because I feel like I never am good at these. So I'll start. My name's Dawn. I'm based in Toronto, and I'm here because I have been involved with Data Together from the Edgy perspective. And I'm really excited about the year ahead in the context of, I don't know, FCC stuff and how people are talking about the internet right now. And I'll go around for people I see. So the next person in order is Rico.
Hey everybody, I'm Rico Gardafe, and I've been kind of involved with this since joining Query. So I'm here in my capacity as a Query employee. So working and supporting Brendan, but this mission aligns with a lot of my personal views on how the world should work. So that's what I've stayed for. And I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Thank you. Next person I see is Matt, and then PatCon.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm also from Toronto, also from Edgy. Also interested to see kind of, I'm interested to see where we're going to go next and kind of try and get some clarity on what we all ought to be doing to make that happen.
And I'm Patrick, or PatCon, and I am have been a little MIA lately, but was helping Edgy and True, a group in Toronto that some of us are part of. I'm from Toronto as well. Help with community management things end of last year. I'm a member, co-organizer of the civic tech community in Toronto, and I just really want to see Data Together succeed. So I'm eager to have this conversation.
Awesome. The next two people I see are Brendan and Mike.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm in Brooklyn, sitting next to Rico. Can I get it? Whatever. So I work at Query, and I'm a member of Edgy, and looking forward to figuring out some stuff Data Together. And all you usual suspects and some new wonderful new faces.
Hi, I'm Mike Hucka. I am a staff scientist at Caltech in Pasadena, although physically right now I'm in Santa Barbara, which is where I mostly live. Thankfully, I don't have to be at Caltech every day, otherwise that'd be kind of a long commute. But anyway, I'm interested in data preservation in general. I work in computational sciences, and I think I've been in Data Together since the beginning. And even though I do almost nothing, but I'm rooting for you guys.
The next two people I see are Jess and then Liz.
Hi there, I'm Jess. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm based in the UK, actually in Devon, although I'm doing a PhD at the University of Southampton in web science. And as Don mentioned at the beginning of the call, I'm studying web archiving as my project, which is how I met Brendan and Don last summer. So I'm really interested. I'm coming from Edgy perspective to look at and participate in various Edgy activities to do with web archiving, hence trying to get involved with Data Together. I look forward to seeing what you guys have been up to and future plans and how I might be able to participate in that going forward. That's me.
And I'm Liz Barry, also in Brooklyn, and I'm based mostly at Public Lab, and I was excited to watch Edgy form in response to the administration change here, and have helped organize events in New York and write documentation so that people could also get involved. And so I come from a community science perspective. There's a whole lot of people collecting data. In the good old days, sometimes we, pushed back against the EPA's government data. Well, now we first need to get that in good order. But the need to have a place to store our own hasn't disappeared. And so I think, like Don, I'm also excited about this moment in the internet and a whole series of realizations in this community and in adjacent others.
And I see Matt Zed and Ray.
Hey, I'm Matt Zumwalt. I work at Protocol Labs. We make IPFS and libp2p and Filecoin. And I've been involved in Data Together since the coining of the term. I was present there. And I'm most excited to see, I've been advocating for decentralization in a lot of ways for a number of years. And I'm really excited to see Data Together as the basis for the formation of the harder stuff, the solutions to the harder stuff of people coordinating to store data and like all those problems of collective action and governing of the commons. I think it's a great group so far, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Hi, I'm Ray Cha. I'm based in Brooklyn and Baltimore part-time. And so currently I am the software product manager on the web monitoring team for Edgy. And before that, I started out as a volunteer with some scraping stuff going on with Data Together, I guess pre-Data Together archivers or whatever we were calling it before then. And yeah, just super interested in infrastructure, data projects, open data sources, making sure they're public from all sorts of things beyond the environmental data, including like, transportation data and like Landsat and stuff like that. So super excited that Data Together is sort of reorganizing, formulating for the coming year.
Awesome. So I had put on the agenda, maybe just I wasn't sure, could we just maybe do a temperature check? Do people want a bit of a recap of like what happened from like July to December? Like even like a 5-minute overview of Data Together? Or do people feel comfortable kind of like jumping right in? Can maybe do like thumbs up if you want to recap? Yeah, we want, okay, so we're like so-so.
How about 2.5 minutes? Okay,
yeah, split the difference. I was wondering if I could tap maybe Matt Zed and or Brendan to provide even just like a bit of talk about a bit about the arc of like kind of when we started talking, what happened over last year, and kind of take us through to about now. And I can be like a timekeeper if you want.
I could take a stab at it. So when the phenomenon of data rescue started to happen, I was already sort of focusing on trying to make the case for decentralization. So you could see that this collective effort to download and back up data sets into many hands is just an example of the pattern of decentralization, which in order to do that successfully, you need the tools that are currently kind of ascendant around decentralized web and decentralized technologies. So that's how I got involved, which then allowed me to see the arc of a community taking data into their possession and then uncovering or grappling with all the harder problems of curation and stewardship. And that's where the tools, the first version of Archivers was a more pragmatic, like let's just coordinate efforts at hackathons. And then a second iteration started to move towards tooling that allows you to actually steward this stuff and curate it and keep track of things like provenance, which sort of naturally transitioned into this larger umbrella notion that I had been shooting for of let's start a broader conversation about what does it look like for communities to steward data collectively, and for institutions to be part of that process and for government agencies to be part of that process, but also the people who are relying on the data being peers in the whole conversation. And then underlying it, how do we use decentralized technologies like IPFS to enable that?
That was wonderful. Let's maybe leave it at that. And then so what I was hoping we could do next is I have kind of tried to pull together 7, oof, bad at counting, 8, kind of like sort of quick topics to go through. It's not enough time, but sort of things that we need to touch on, and I hope we can at least trace out, make some decisions in this meeting, or identify when we need to make some decisions. From kind of me saying, what do people think we need to talk about? But I was hoping maybe we could just even spend a couple minutes reviewing what people wrote below, and or like popcorning, brainstorming if there's a couple more that need to be added. So at the top of the agenda, and I'll paste it in chat, these were the 7/8, still having a hard time understanding how many I put, things that I think we need to talk about. So kind of like a round of updates, thinking about our meeting schedule, kind of, I think what came up a lot is like, what are we doing over the next 6 months? So maybe just pausing on that. I think from an edgy perspective, this could go under partner updates, something around an MOU. That was sort of a big consideration from an edgy side. Communications, this might also be like tied to the one below, because sort of onboarding, collaborations, how we invite people and projects in, came up in a couple people's, and then sort of open questions. So maybe this is also like things we need to decide in the next 6 months. Where are the big parts that, you know, what are the pieces that we know we don't know yet, or something unknown? I don't know. The Rumsfeld quote is growing on me over time. Could have been that. So do people just want to spend a second maybe reviewing what other people wrote or thinking? And are there any additional ones? Should we resequence those? How does that feel?
I'll write mine now. I'm sorry, I forgot.
No worries. Okay, so yeah, let's maybe spend a moment or two. Just if you have something on your mind, you could throw it below in that team-sourced chunk. And then let's just make sure that that sequence of what we're going to talk about is the right things that we all think we should, you know, spend time on in this call. Okay, maybe just so if people have had a chance to review and or write, it seems like the 6-month plan, something around potentially sensitive communications, or like understanding those kind of like maybe what are public conversations, or maybe what have to be kind of partner conversations, and mission versus platform driven, and sort of, again, a partner update. So do we want to revise and or maybe rejig these topics that we have right now? My sense is partner updates probably covers things. I actually think edgy MOU kind of could fall under that. One thing I would say too is, like, obviously we're not going to like do all this in this meeting. So there'll be some like trying to break out next steps. But maybe I'll add to communications like public and partner to make sure we talk about both. Does that feel good? Anything else that people would like to add or suggest a slight adjustment to? Yeah, Matt, Zed.
Just for the next 6 months projects discussion deserves a longer discussion and attention. So maybe if we frame today's discussion around how are we going to do that, how and when, rather than, like, we can dive in a bit to give like a preview of what we need to discuss, but let's not force ourselves to try to cover that in 5 to 10 minutes.
Absolutely. And maybe we could, I just think maybe moving it down, because it's probably a little bit linked to open questions, so we can emphasize really how to have those conversations, and then start to trace out maybe some of the areas that we know we need to be focusing on. Okay, cool. So one final call for some adjustments. Are we representing? Okay, let's move on. Cool. So partner updates. I in no way gave people warning, but in terms of this being a public recorded conversation, do we want to just go around and say, we could start with Query. If you want to give like a brief update, so we'll keep this aim to it be fairly concise. If there's anything we want to share now, Pakon.
If we're open to it, we can have like an on camera. If someone wants to say it, I can hit the button. So. Oh, sure. Yeah. What's the Robert's Rules name for this? I would be great. I would be super happy to do that. Would people prefer to do that? We could just do a thumbs up. Do people want to stop recording for this bit? Would that be valuable, or is it kind of a public conversation is fine? I mean, keeping in mind what you'll say, depending. I can just do it as soon as it's like, oh, let's go off camera for this. Like, I'm going to say this thing. It doesn't have to be the full section. Yeah, because like we don't have anything. We have no secrets. Okay, so how about we do that then? So we can start and then just say off camera if we want to drop the recording. Okay, cool. Query. Great. Okay. Yeah. So we've been okay. So keeping this as quick as possible. We've been working a while. We've transitioned a little bit in the way that we describe Query over the last little while. And we've transitioned from calling ourselves like SQL on datasets to becoming a dataset version control system, which has been the result of us really meditating on a lot of the intersection of our work at Data Together and our work at Query. For me personally, and for the team, one of the big challenges is right now we wear two really big hats. One is Data Together as like a sort of platform thing, and then Query as a platform thing. And the two of them do a lot of really similar stuff. And so we've been trying to figure out like, okay, what problems are we trying to solve sort of holistically, regardless of whether that's inside of our project or inside of Data Together? And how can we position the technology to sort of best do that? And then what gets in the way of us, of that technology proliferating and being used properly by people? And so we've been doing a lot of soul searching at Query about how to best solve those sets of problems. We think a dataset version control system based on IPFS that has authentication and automatic tracking of any changes and manipulations to data is the thing that the world needs. We think that it needs to support high dimensional data. We think that all of the data on it needs to automatically interoperate. And we think that a lot of the problems that we have been discovering as we worked on Data Together and Data Rescue and the whole archivers, pick the name, this represents this really big sort of distributed problem set. And so we've sort of looked at ourselves through the lens of like, okay, what if we were sort of one of these really big partners in Data Together and someone who instantiated a lot of the goals that we espouse. And and so we came with on the tech side, we repositioned the way we describe the technology. We're more about version control now, more about authenticity around that version control. And then that sort of brought us to a really big conversation we've been having internally for a number of months now about licensing. And we've been talking a lot about what it means for Query, what would it mean for Query to participate more directly in the Data Together sort of ideals and vision. And so I've gone ahead and had a number of conversations with Bob, one of our key investors, and then with everybody at the Query team. And we want to bring it to everybody. We want to put to this community the idea of would it make for a better world if Query was licensed under the GPL? And so this is a question we kind of want to put to this community quite specifically because we're very excited about it. It's something that we're ready to do and leaning towards. I tipped my hand a bunch in talking to Saud a little while ago, and where I thought that the top actual Query application should be licensed GPL and all of the underlying technology should be licensed MIT, so that to deal with the sort of hypermodularity problem in software today, You should be able to just take any of the packages that we write and use them for whatever you want. But if you want to use something that advances the data commons, it might make sense for that technology to be licensed in a way that is copyleft. And so our question here to the community is like, we want to give you this update. We haven't yet finalized that decision because we really think that that input, whether we do this or not, really hinges on whether we think that's a good idea from this community. Because my goal, regardless of the name of the project, is to solve the problems that we all talk about every day. And if moving to the GPL makes it so that we can sort of deduplicate some of this work, if it means that we can sort of trust in the technology that we're building to be part of the commons, then we're really excited to do that. But it's a discussion that we want to sort of put on the table as, would that help us sort of in our efforts to make something really great that solves these problems and has a degree of ownership by everybody involved. And so that's something we want to put forward. It has a lot of implications, and it might, and I want to hear what you have to say about it, but that's our big update.
That's great. Could we aim for, if there's one burning immediate clarification question, having that now, and then otherwise, I think licensing, my sense is that's
we can jump to end of stack for the actual conversation. Yeah.
Okay. So burning question, clarification. Okay. In reverse alphabetical order, let's go to protocol. Next.
All right. So the public portions of my update are Protocol Labs will be over this quarter looking to hire one or more people to be working on stuff that would be directly interacting with data together. So we'll be able to, I was hoping I personally would have more free time this quarter, but that was overly optimistic. So, but we'll be allocating more people to be helping and contributing. And then something to flag is the Internet Archive is going to be doing a Decentralized Web Summit 2018, sort of an 18-month update. So we should be thinking about what role Data Together wants to be playing in that. And oh, Ray, did you have a question?
Just, is there an ETA in this year when that is? Like,
yeah, no, I don't. They haven't nailed down a date. It's more like they are now convening the discussions to frame what are the objectives for this. Like, so the objectives will then decide, is it a conference of 80 people or 400 people? And like, what's the framing? The one thing that's clear is that it will be in San Francisco, because Internet Archive, there's like a physicality to the Internet Archive that they don't want to let go of. I've been playing with the idea of we should do a webinar. I know people are kind of allergic to that term, but it's the accurate term of, but doing a Data Together thing that features use cases that motivate this work, and then also features projects and people who have built stuff and solutions in this space. So not just this work we've been working on, but also more broadly. I think that would be great to convene. Reflections on licensing, I'll follow up later, but basically Brendan's framing seems compelling. All right, and then could we turn off the recording for the stuff that, there's basically potential before you stop recording, there's...
Cool, thank you, Pekon. Great, okay, hi, we're out of camera. And in terms of an edgy update, I mean, I think this could be quite brief. Does Matt or anyone else at Edgy want to give it? Otherwise, I'll give sorry, Matt Price, I'll give us sort of a succinct one. Neat, okay. So in terms of a work around archiving, not too much has been going on. I think almost everyone's available. Archiving Energies has been sort of toward Data Together, especially sort of from October on with participating in the sprint. The only things I would like to sort of surface, one is we put in for this Compute Canada infrastructure grant as TRU, but there would be some, like, I think potential where that would be like working with edgy people to sort of have resources to put towards like hosting a node. In addition, Edgy has resources separate from that on AWS towards putting toward a node. So there's some ability where we as an organization, I think, are interested in like trying to implement or run with some of the reference implementation stuff that we've been working on previously. I'll just surface the MOU thing here. So I think, Edgy was sort of going through the questions of what our organizational structure should be throughout the year. The decision is, we're not immediately pursuing 501c3 ourselves, but are still fiscally sponsored by one. So kind of thinking about what our obligations are to protect that status and how, we want to make sure that we're working in relationships where we can do what we say we're going to do or understand clearly that dynamic. We're kind of looking to make sure that we have MOUs. So I think there needs to be some, we had some students from the Cyber Law Clinic who helped kind of thinking about initial framing for that. But I think that's an open question that Edgy would like to make sure that there's something in place. And that, I would say that is the update unless someone feels like I've missed something critical. Otherwise, sure, Ray or Matt. Ray first and then Matt.
Sure, just super quickly. We're doing a lot of Edgy internal planning too for the next year, and something that came up by several people were Edgy wanting to do more public-facing events, and a lot of discussion is around web monitoring. I think partly because the data archiving work has sort of been quieter. I don't know if they're like it has to be web monitoring or not, and I'm bringing this up for the first time. But the idea of if data together starts getting more momentum, there could be more data together collaboration too. I think the main goal is Edgy wants to be more public-facing with some event-oriented things. And I know there's a lot of work, so if we do pool resources together, there's potential that we can sort of, equally benefit with that kind of stuff.
And then Matt.
I'm just going to say that we also applied for money that would allow somebody to spend more time working on data together. And that the current non-query Edgy people are all pretty burdened. So, I think we had all hoped to be able to step up a little more, and none of us seems to really have a big window that will obviously allow us to work more intensively.
Okay, so just in the interest of time, let's maybe move on to thinking about, so wait, what was the order we decided on? Meeting, schedule, and then communications. So I'm wondering if we could just sort of time bracket these next two things and identify some next steps to then spend the rest of the time talking about kind of next 6 months and how collaborating with other groups. So I guess I just wanted to check in or say what our current schedule is, which is Thursday, a tech stand-up once a week on Thursdays at 6 p.m. I can speak for myself, and I think this is a thing across Edgy, that it seems like every semester people's availability switch because we're sort of really tied to academic stuff, and I actually can't make those times for probably the next term. So I also think that a tech stand-up is a piece of a piece of how we're communicating, but it seems maybe more broadly, it would be good to have how do people feel about our ability to sync up and or how we want to support that in the next while? Yeah, Brent.
Yeah, I think I'd also tabled the notion of proposing that we maybe play with the format of this, because we've been doing this once a week tech stand-up meeting, but looking down the agenda, we have some questions about partnership time and framing stuff around that. And so I think there's sort of two things that we kind of need to disentangle as part of this. One is finding a time that works to get together and be consistent. And then the other big thing is I think we need to sort of, we have these more tech things, but I think the other layer that seems to be missing is a chance where all partners get a chance to meet up that is maybe less frequent, but we can sort of, over the last little while, we really need some time. It's cool, we're all gonna sync up here, and this is when partnership discussion will happen. This is when sort of more organizational affairs will happen. So I think we almost, I want to propose that maybe there's almost two tracks, which is a more work-oriented frequency, high frequency, lower commitment type conversation, and there's a more high commitment requirement type track of meeting.
Matt said.
Yeah, echoing that, it seems like there's a need for something that's not weekly, but is more of this higher level coordinating that's not specifically about the technology. And if you look back, it seems like we had in-person meetings about every 6 months. I think there were 2 last year. And then there were also, in between that, there were about once a quarter, once a semester, there was some sort of bigger call. And actually, had we planned in anticipation of those as being meetings that we planned for in advance, and like we might have actually gotten even more out of that time.
Okay, yeah, those are all great thoughts. Does anyone else want to share back on?
Yeah, no, I think all that sounds, like the 2 tracks sounds really interesting and likely needed. I just wanted to flag, like, if it would be cool if maybe it was like, I don't know, like the 3rd week of the month was like one that was more welcoming and less technical, just to like, I feel like could be, if partnership conversations get a little too detached from who's showing up at other calls, whoever that may be, that would be a slight concern, but anyway, otherwise sounds good.
So to kind of follow up on Matt Zed's point about, that we did have these other types of conversations, mostly in person and sort of somewhat quarterly, would people feel like quarterly as a dedicated, intentional, like partner meeting would make sense, Matt Price, or is that too little, too low, too much?
I think it's pretty realistic, and the only thing I would say is that it would be nice to have some sense of how we organize decision making and communication in between. So I think it sounds like a realistic schedule, and one that requires some way of getting in touch with each other and moving the project along in between.
Okay, so, but how we make decisions in between. That sounds reasonable. Other people, oh, sorry, Liz, I missed your hand.
I agree with what Matt just said. That sounds great. And just, I guess to add into that exact sentiment, we're a little backlogged right now. So maybe that means that we just, need to have one of these quarterly meetings, sooner. And then also the other things that Matt said.
Okay, great. So can I maybe put forward as a proposal, just in the interest of time, that we establish like sort of a quarterly, intentionally like sort of more coordinating partnership style meeting, but that this quarter we actually have maybe 2. So we aim to have one sooner than later to kind of clear up a backlog, address things like decision-making process, and maybe some other structure questions, because I think we probably will need to have that conversation for a bit longer, and then kind of proceed from there. Does that work for people? Could we? So I guess the pitch is that we would have like another meeting at probably an hour of like a partnership one, and then kind of get onto a quarterly schedule. Okay, great. So that's the like a meeting schedule thing. It also seems like maybe as part of that first meeting, again, sooner than later, we're kind of near the second half of, or we're in the second half of January, is also thinking about like the format of like maybe our, whatever our lower intensity weekly thing is as well. So it's maybe not always run like a stand-up. It's not only focused on TEF. So the next topic was communications. And I think this is both, I think maybe where we're coordinating a little bit, but also kind of like how we manage public and maybe semi-sensitive stuff. But I don't know if other people want to, if there are other things that we maybe want to think about communications or surface here. I think the decision-making stuff maybe kind of fits in. So we maybe think we need an async process for decisions, other elements. If no one's immediately has one to surface, do we want to just talk about how we handle semi-sensitive stuff? Because that seemed like the more pressing thing. I mean, we noticed today we already have those kind of like that track of like some things to talk about that can't be public. Do people feel like things are time sensitive? Like, when it's time sensitive, is it something that could wait till a partner meeting? Like, does that rate of communication feel appropriate? Do we need sort of more regular partner only ways to communicate stuff? That said,
I mean, from my side, it seemed like, I mean, if there's something that needs to be discussed that's like more urgent, you just reach out and say, hey, we need to talk about X, like, but coordinate by email and schedule a one-off thing. But then otherwise, when things have come up that I needed to discuss that were more sensitive, I was able to wait. And it would help if I knew when those meetings are going to happen. So then I would know whether I should wait or whether I should say, hey, let's get on the phone.
okay, so maybe what I'm hearing is we schedule in advance like the next few meetings so that people have a scale to assess when to communicate. I saw two hands, PatCon and then Matt Price. Oh, not Matt Price, just PatCon.
I'm not sure if maybe it's out of scope of how you're thinking, Matt C, and if so, just let me know. But I was wondering whether it felt odd to have partner conversations in like the Slack channel archivers, and whether there's what Edgy. I really am inspired by how Edgy handles like private resources, like private documents and private channels. They keep kind of a running list. They encourage that to happen because they recognize sometimes you need to have out of the public conversations, but they kind of have a little document where they document who's in there, who do you go to get access, and the reason why it's privileged. And that's kind of just a maintained thing. So I was wondering whether that might be useful for data together conversations around partnerships, like, go into private, but just like tell others that you're going in private, and like have a point person in case someone else wants to enter that conversation.
If I'll just respond. I know that from my side, Slack is just terrible. It's horrible for surfacing something that's important versus noise. And I'm like obligated to be on 8 different Slack organizations. and I go through whole periods where I just can't, I can only pay attention to the Protocol Labs one because it's my daily work. And so things don't surface. Conversations that are there that I agree are important, if they happen in a Slack channel, I find out about them months later.
So yeah, +1 from Liz. And I know that PatCon had also surfaced in the reflections, like, do we want to think about whether Slack is the right place to have some those kinds of community data together conversations? I'm going to say we should like park that as an open question that we're not going to resolve on this call, but that's something that other people have also brought up. I just wanted to make that connection. Okay, so Matt Price, and then I'm just going to make a pitch for what we do with the rest of our time. So Matt.
Just, and I think I find email difficult also because we don't necessarily all use email regularly for our communications together as a group. And so that's a little bit, we'd have to get there. And then I think it's fine for semi-sensitive things, but then of course it's kind of terribly insecure for the most part as a messaging strategy. And so if we had stuff that was genuinely sensitive, that involved anybody's safety or anything like that, then it again becomes kind of a shitty mechanism. I don't anticipate that we will in this group.
Okay, so it sounds like there is a bit of there's a few open questions around how we deal with our communications, and that might be like a partner coordination meeting topic to kind of dive into and have a strategy to go forward on. So we have 10 minutes left. Can I feel out if people are okay staying an extra 5 minutes? Does that work for people?
I have to go to the IPFS all hands.
Okay, so then.
But I have to pick between them, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the remaining 3 things we're going to talk about was inviting people on projects in next 6 months and open questions. Maybe could we, those are a lot of things. Maybe could we just say I think inviting people and projects in are kind of part of maybe the next 6 months. So could we just surface what people are expecting or hoping for over the next 6 months and just kind of like try and get as many of those out and have that kind of inform the next meeting? And then I'll end with us setting a time for the next, like not necessarily the specific window, but like trying to figure out when our next coordinating meeting is. And then we'll leave it at that. So next 6 months, what are people's like hopes and dreams or kind of needs maybe as a partner? And so we heard a little bit about there'll be more resources coming from different, from protocol, fingers crossed, of different types from Edgy and like kind of queries direction. But what are people hoping for the project for the next 6 months?
I'll jump in. So I think I already said in the public part of my comments, doing something like a webinar that's featuring use cases and solutions that fit under this heading, that also situates the specific data together reference implementation code base within a context of other similar things, and like furthers that conversation. So that's one specific thing. And then also getting our heads together to make clarity around how big do we want the umbrella to be, because that's what would let me figure out which projects and which initiatives to like push for under this heading versus holding them to the side.
I want to surface 2 points that people raised, and Brendan, one of them was yours, so I'll just say it and then hand it off to you, which was mission-driven versus tech project-driven. Can we like surface that if there was an ask in the next 6 months?
Yeah, totally. That was something that I wanted to sort of speak to. I think we've had, as we've talked about, Matt Price sort of cogently referenced, we have a bit of a burden question. And so for us, I've been exploring like, how can we do more with less and how can we be efficient? And so over the next 6 months, I'd love to see what query as a reference implementation would look like. And if that sort of helps us reduce our technical overhead and then allows some of our data together projects to focus on a more specific sort of intersection of archiving and distributed web needs that maybe query doesn't solve. Yeah, so to that end, but that's a big conversation I'm hoping to have. And so we can see how that works. I'm also really hoping to get the Edgy MOU done in the next 6 months. It'd be super fun to get that sort of done properly.
Pakon, and I'm sorry, I think I missed someone's hand.
So I would, the things I would hope to see in the next 6 months is more new faces as a secondary effect of, I think how I would prefer that coming about is use cases that are more, that communities can understand and see themselves in, and maybe like defined users who are showing up and talking about us.
I'm gonna pitch one in. I think and then Liz after me. I think there was a lot of really cool things that happened, I think at the Johns Hopkins hackathon, or there was a lot of interest. So I would love to have those people drawn into a conversation around data together. And that I think connects to how people get brought on board as partners. And then
Public Lab is also working with Internet Archive, who's just offered to back up all of Public Lab community science collected data for all time. And it just seems like a relevant, point of reference for this conversation. I'm also eager to tune it's essentially inviting more people and the use cases like others have said. So it's just +1 on that. But, just making sure we're actually tuning what we're building to the use cases that we envision, but aren't actually here sitting in these conversations. And I always, I really like this idea that Edgy wants to do more public events. I think this is, we were framing earlier, like the internet as a whole is being questioned right now, and a broader audience is aware of this issue than is aware specifically of like this data archiving piece of it. And so, I don't know, the event we're holding in New York tomorrow is kind of coalition building in that sense, like side by side with Mesh, which has an interesting, very tangible economic connection, which is like, if you really have a good line of sight, I mean, maybe you stop paying that utility bill. And, a lot of people talk about, what's the future of the internet without paid speech. And so I think there's, talking economics when we're thinking about reaching out to people to participate in this is really important. I think there's a lot of, along the lines of like explaining what we're doing better, inviting more people in. I think, any work Protocol Labs has on like explaining like what Filecoin is, even if we're, years away from something there, I think that would help because it's part of this picture. And basically just making, accessible activities. I think sorry, I'm talking so much, but the SETI, the SETI-like nature, the participatory design, where people quite far away from either building or needing this technology can still contribute to the network, is very interesting to me. And there's a lot of PR that I'm, assuming all the other things get sorted out right, there's a lot of PR I'm excited about doing for that. Okay, I'm going to stop talking.
That's awesome. I love the Liz Berry brain dumps. So many ideas. So many things I want to do now, and I don't have time. Okay, we have 2 minutes maybe because my clock is slow. Okay, so I'm wondering if I could make this one pitch, and then I can stay on, and we can stay on and do a little more collecting. But this is my proposal. Is that we actually aim to meet again in February and March on more of a hashing some of these things out. And I would actually love to borrow from Michelle's working meeting model for EDJ because it rocks and is so effective. So we actually maybe do some agenda setting in advance. We know kind of some decisions we have to make, but then we hash out some key aspects of that during a meeting. So like planning for 2 hours instead of 1, or like an hour and a half. Does that work? So I'll distribute maybe a poll to set 2 times. So we'll have a February and a March meeting around aiming to answer some of what people raised over this. Can we do a quick check-in, or if people have a thought on that? And then I'll let people who have a hard stop leave. Okay. And then Matt Price, your thought, and then we'll stay on. I can stay on this call for another 15 minutes, and we can kind of surface some more of anyone's ideas and thoughts.
Just quickly, for those working meetings, if we're doing work there, like suppose Matt Zed suddenly can't make it, is that still okay? So we can schedule the meeting and do the work through the meeting, or do we really all need to be there for the kind of meeting that you're describing?
Well, yeah, my sense is we would want some form of representation from all partners. I mean, if protocol is bringing in new people, then it might not be tied to Matt Zed, but I always love having Matt Zed in a meeting. So I'm going to advocate for that. Matt, what are your thoughts? I don't want to speak for you, which I just
did. Maybe having some sense of necessary quorum. I think this also follows under the heading of just like getting some formalism about how and when decisions are made. That then this is your specific question. I think is one point in that thing of if a conversation happened, does that mean the decision was made? If it's not, what needs to happen in order for the decision to be made? As long as that's clear, I think that will make everything else much clearer.
Could we then say a commitment that we have representation from all at the next meeting, and then that will be one of the first things that we determine? Okay, great. And so maybe PatCon, your thought, and then, but people, I know you might have to start falling off, so.
Definitely related. Thanks, Don. Definitely related to decision making. I would, if possible, I would love to discuss the way that we could have decisions. Basically not, if you're there in person, that's not the only way you can be involved in decisions. If there's kind of like some process we have that kind of, the decision can be made after, if like people can read the notes and catch up, and that kind of encourages us to make sure the notes have the proper context for the decisions too. And it doesn't kind of place up there like the being there for a certain time as the only way that you can, to put meetings like above everything else. Anyhow.
Yeah, so PatCon, maybe that's a proposal that we can ensure gets surfaced at the next, that meeting. But yes, and even if you're not there, Matt said.
It would be really useful if we could have a proposal to review before that meeting. I can't commit to do that alone, but I could commit to work with someone on making it.
On decision making?
Yeah, like put together a draft of hey, here's how we might go about doing it so that everyone can review it and comment and then
give us something to vote on.
Yeah.
PatCon, was that you nominating yourself?
I'd be interested in a conversation.
Great. So so Matt said PatCon are going to work on that proposal around decision making. I'm going to distribute the poll to set our time, and we're kind of committing to attending a February meeting, and then there'll be another March meeting. Okay. And then if people have more thoughts about things in the next 6 months, I'm happy to stick on, but let's just give a little bit of a break and say thank you for people who have to leave. So it was great to see everyone.
It was great to see you all. Thanks.
Yeah, later.
I'm gonna hang out in case anyone.
Oh, and I'll be at the thing tomorrow in New York. If anyone, I know Liz will be there. I don't know if anyone else.
I'm going to be remotely.
I'll be there.
Oh, okay. Right.
And Ray.
Can somebody paste some info about the thing tomorrow? Where to find out more about that?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, it's in the Place NYC channel in Archivers, but we'll put it in Data Together as well. I'm assuming Liz will. But one of us will.
Okay, so are there additional thoughts, Sawid, maybe your point as well, around something about, I think maybe it was communications?
Getting known in communities is important because somehow I got to know about Data Together, otherwise I wouldn't have. And I think one approach would be to, especially in the academic community and scientific community, one good approach would be to have some publications and go to conferences like data science related conferences, archiving, digital libraries, and conferences like that, and having a workshop there or publishing papers. We academicians are very happy to contribute on something like or collaborate on some ideas that are, writing code is one thing and writing paper is other thing. So inviting people from other universities to collaborate on some papers and submit to conferences could be one approach to get known by more people. I was also trying to figure out where we can fit in the mix. Like we from ODU, we work a lot on archival data, though we do not collect content per se. Like we are not an archivist in the sense like we run a crawler or anything. But when we get data, we analyze it, we try to find patterns and publish research around that and build tools for archiving related stuff. So certainly there are places where we can collaborate. Some of our colleagues from our lab can perhaps jump in. Matt is already around, I'm here sometimes, and there are many other folks who actually don't know about it. The other approach would be to have a blog and periodically talk about what's going on in Data Together, some breakthroughs or any announcement and stuff like that. Just put that publicly, because the Slack thing is just so locked in. Whatever happens there remains there. And after that 10,000 message list or limit or something, we won't even be able to search those past things. So it's a dangerous place to have a conversation that you want to retain in future. And I think blog could be one way. Having some activity on Twitter, and getting in touch with broader community around this thing would be another way to surface what's happening in Data Together.
I think those are great. So, and this might be a little too much of a pulling together, but I'm hearing something around outreach strategy, which is huge. and I kind of actually wanted to put maybe back to you and Matt, you were saying like, how do people like us who are doing like this sort of archiving work like you're doing become involved? I mean, like, in addition to maybe some of those ways, like, you know, when Matt Zed mentioned something like a webinar, like, are there like formats or ways that you could see participating that we want to just also quickly write down here?
I'll have to give more thoughts on that. I don't have anything ready, because I mean, for me, I was working on something, and then I saw the notification that some conversation is going on. I just hopped in. But I'll perhaps discuss with other folks here at our lab and see if there is if there is something that we can work out together. And Matt might want to chime in, and if he has any ideas.
And Brendan afterwards.
Yeah, Matt, if you want to chime in, go ahead. You can interrupt me whenever you want.
I don't have a lot of concrete ideas. I think, however, that, you know, Edgy has its own.
I think you meant other Matt.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, I feel like I
other
did
Matt's not here, though.
a miserable job of trying to like incorporate all the Matts. Okay, so
quickly,
Brendan, Mike.
No, I just wanted to say, I think Matt Kelly DM'd in the chat that his audio visual is not working, so I think he's not able to do anything except listen. That's probably why he's not replying.
Helpful. Yeah, all I was going to say was to Swoon, I think to your point, you have a very good point at like conference appearances and some sort of blog, and we've had a few things, but they haven't been under the Data Together like flagship. So I just posted a link in chat to like an Edgy blog post about Data Together, and then we've also been making some applications to conferences to talk about Data Together. But to your point, we haven't really collected all those up in one place and sort of made a push to that. And so I think that's something we can speak to and improve on. But there are things happening in the Edge, and maybe we need to do a better job before we even get to the like Data Together stuff of just like promoting like the Edgy blog Data Together conversations and the applications that have been happening outside of it. But yeah, so loud and clear, hear you on that one. But I just wanted to let you know that we're not totally flat-footed on that.
Okay, so just thinking about timing, I don't want to keep us too much over, but I wanted to invite all those people who haven't said anything, if they have thoughts or want to speculate on the next 6 months, or I don't know, get super stoked about the future right now together. This is a moment. Okay, Jess.
Hiya. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention really briefly, and maybe this is for the next meeting as well, but just to talk about onboarding, which I know you guys have talked about in the past quite a lot, and I've been reading lots and lots of documentation that has reference to sorting out onboarding. But obviously, as a new participant, that's kind of key interest to me, and I'm happy to run through and sort of test, I guess, any new ideas that we have around that, but also just getting to grips with kind of how my skill sets relate to the project and where they can be best used, et cetera, and how to, you know, integrate that into the onboarding process. That would be the only thing I heard not mentioned yet.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, and I think Liz had sort of surfaced something around that in the like pre-ideas about like updating docs, and we had some like getting started docs. So there is some stuff, but understanding that actual process is, I think, needs to happen. Maybe Kevin or Rico or Ray, no requirements. Just trying to fill time in case you want to jump in. Okay, cool. So I think we have some next steps that I think feel appropriate. I feel like February is going to come terrifyingly fast. So that meeting maybe with a clearer sense of a few key areas that we'll work on and kind of make some progress on, I think will be great. And this will really help prioritize that. My goal for that is that we'll actually better distribute in advance an agenda. So it's easier to kind of like, you know, this was a little bit super open. That one will have a little more form so we can know what we're missing earlier, but I welcome, of course, as always, people's input. I'd also say if someone's interested in like doing some of the like running and convening meetings, that would be cool too. If you want to let me know, and we could work together on that, because I think that might be a nice model to think about, like how we can like share some of that stuff for people who are interested. And the last thing I want to say is that we have a social media presence. Someone anemic, and our first tweet went out today. So speaking about outreach, so I think our website, which we also now can update in a regular way, whoa, and a Twitter, we're making moves. Okay, cool. Well, maybe Pakon, you can have parting thoughts, and then we'll say goodbye to each other.
It's just a question, just to confirm. Communications and like specific decisions around that, that's a later conversation, right?
Yeah, I think that's a next call, next time conversation. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. It's great to see you all.
Goodbye.
I
was imagining we were all going to yell that at the same time.
You know, it's hard. You have to reach for the unmute button. So you're like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you, everyone. Bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.